The late afternoon sun filtered through my kitchen window, casting golden light across the old Singer sewing machine I'd been meaning to oil for weeks. I was hemming a tablecloth, cream-colored linen with delicate blue embroidery, when the phone rang. "Mom?" Peregrine's voice sounded tired. "I need to ask you something." My heart did what every mother's heart does when her child sounds troubled. It clenched. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" There was a pause. In that silence, I heard traffic noise, maybe the rustle of him shifting the phone. "Mari and we're having some financial difficulties, just temporary, you know how it is. The market's been tough and—" Another pause. "Would it be okay if we stayed with you for a while, just a few months, until we get back on our feet?" I looked around my small house. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a living room that still held the couch where my late husband Thomas used to fall asleep watching the evening news. It had been 7 years since Thomas died in that construction accident. 7 years of this house being too quiet, too empty. "Of course," I said, maybe too quickly. "Of course you can come home." The relief in his voice was palpable. "Thanks, Mom. You're a lifesaver. We'll be there this weekend." After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a long moment, my hands resting on the cool countertop. I thought about Peregrine at 7 years old, presenting me with a crayon drawing of the two of us under a rainbow. "I love you, Mom," he'd written in wobbly letters. I thought about him at 17, embarrassed when I showed up to his basketball game, but secretly pleased. I thought about him at 25, bringing Maristella to meet me for the first time. Her designer handbag probably worth more than my monthly pension. Her smile bright, but somehow not reaching her eyes. I shook off the memory and got to work. I cleaned the spare bedroom, washed the sheets, cleared space in the closet. I grocery shopped, filling my cart with the foods Peregrine liked as a boy, though he was 38 now, a grown man with a wife and a life I only glimpsed during hurried holiday visits. That Saturday, they arrived in a sleek, black sedan that looked out of place on my modest street. Maristella stepped out first, wearing white jeans and a silk blouse, her dark hair pulled into a perfect ponytail. She surveyed the neighborhood with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Phoenicia!" She kissed both my cheeks in that affected way she had. "Thank you so much for having us. This is just temporary, of course." "Of course," I echoed. Peregrine looked thinner than when I'd last seen him at Christmas. There were shadows under his eyes, new lines around his mouth. He hugged me tight, and for a moment I felt that familiar warmth, that connection between mother and son. "Thanks, Mom," he whispered into my hair. "I know this isn't ideal." "Nonsense," I said firmly. "A mother always has room for her son." As I helped them carry in their suitcases, expensive leather luggage, I noticed, I caught Maristella's eyes sweeping through my living room, lingering on the old family photos, the modest furniture, the hand-crocheted Afghans I'd made during the long winters after Thomas died. That first week, everything seemed normal, almost too normal. They settled in quickly. Maristella made a show of helping with dinner, though I noticed she always found a reason to leave the actual cooking to me. Peregrine fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom, replaced some burnt-out light bulbs, mowed the lawn. We fell into a routine. But then came the questions. It started innocently enough. We were having coffee one morning, just Maristella and me. Peregrine had left early for a job interview. She cradled her mug. She'd brought her own specialty coffee, the kind that came in those fancy pods, and looked at me with what seemed like genuine concern. "Phoenicia, do you have savings for your retirement, I mean?" I hesitated. There's something about talking about money that always felt private, almost shameful to my generation. But she was family now, wasn't she? "Yes," I said carefully. "I worked for 40 years. I managed to save something." "That's wonderful." Her smile was warm, approving. "So many women your age don't have that security. You must be so relieved." "I am." She took a sip of coffee, her eyes on me over the rim. "Do you keep it in a regular savings account? Or do you have investments? CDS maybe? I only asked because Perry and I could help you maximize your returns. He's really good with finance. Perry. She was the only one who called him that. I'd always called him Peregrine, the name Thomas, and I chose because it meant wanderer, and we'd hoped our son would see the world, have adventures we never could. It's in a savings account at Central Bank, I said, nothing fancy. And is it all in one account or do you have it divided up? Something in the specificity of the question made me pause. Why do you ask, dear? Oh, no reason. Her laugh was light, dismissive. Just curious. It's good to diversify, you know. Spread the risk. The conversation moved on, but it left an odd taste in my mouth, like I'd revealed something I shouldn't have. 2 days later, Peregrine asked his own questions. We were watching television, some crime drama I didn't really care about, when he turned to me during a commercial. Mom, roughly how much do you have saved? I looked at him sharply. Why? I just want to make sure you're comfortable, that you have enough for, if something happens. Medical expenses, that kind of thing. I'm fine, Peregrine. I have Medicare and I have my savings. I planned for this. He nodded, but something in his eyes bothered me. A calculating look, there and gone so quickly I almost thought I'd imagined it. The next week, I came home from Sunday Mass to find Maristella in my bedroom. She jumped when I appeared in the doorway, her hand still on my dresser drawer. Oh, she pressed a hand to her chest. You startled me. I was just looking for that recipe you mentioned. The one for the lemon cake? My recipes are in the kitchen, I said quietly, in the green binder on the counter. Right, of course. I must have gotten confused. She brushed past me, leaving a trail of expensive perfume. I stood in my bedroom for a long moment after she left. My jewelry box had been moved, just slightly, but I noticed. The drawer she'd had her hand on was where I kept my important papers, or where I used to keep them before something told me to move them to a better hiding spot. That night, I called my friend Dorothy. Something's not right, I told her, keeping my voice low even though Peregrine and Maristella were in their room with the door closed. They keep asking about my money. Dorothy had known me for 35 years. We'd raised our sons together, shared recipes and heartaches, survived widowhood together. She knew me well enough to hear what I wasn't saying. Trust your instincts, Phoenicia, she said. A mother knows. But I didn't want to know. I wanted to believe the best of my son, of the man I'd raised alone after his father died. I wanted to believe in the sanctity of family, in blood bonds, in the promise I'd made to Thomas on his deathbed. I'll take care of our boy. So I ignored the warning signs. I told myself I was being paranoid, that grief and loneliness had made me suspicious. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything crystallized. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner, pot roast the way Peregrine liked it, when I heard Maristella's excited voice from the living room. Honey, I found it! The perfect refrigerator! I glanced through the kitchen doorway. She was on the couch, a glossy appliance catalog spread across her lap like a treasure map. Peregrine sat beside her, looking at whatever she was pointing to. This is the one, she continued, her voice breathless with desire. Look at these features. It's a smart fridge. It has a touchscreen. It can order groceries automatically. It even has a camera inside, so you can see what you need while you're at the store. How much? Peregrine asked. I froze, my hand on the peeler, waiting. 25,000. The number hung in the air like a grenade. $25,000 for a refrigerator. I thought about my own refrigerator purchased at Sears 12 years ago for $800. It worked perfectly fine. The ice maker still made ice. The vegetables stayed crisp. What more did anyone need? That's a lot, Mari, Peregrine said, but his voice lacked conviction. But your mom has the money, Maristella said. And there it was, casual, matter-of-fact, as if my money were a communal resource. Think of it as an investment. A quality appliance like this will last 30 years, and it'll save on electricity in the long run. I watched Peregrine nod slowly, considering. I watched him glance toward the kitchen, checking if I was listening. Our eyes met for just a moment before he looked away. Then he did something that made my breath catch in my throat. He stood up and walked to the dining room chair where I'd hung my purse. Without asking, without even looking my way, he reached into it. I couldn't move. I stood there, carrot in one hand, peeler in the other, watching my son go through my purse as if it belonged to him. But he didn't find what he was looking for. Instead of my debit card, his hand emerged with folded papers, documents I'd moved from my bedroom drawer to my purse just that morning, driven by an instinct I hadn't fully understood until now. He unfolded them slowly. I saw the color drain from his face. "What is it?" Maristella demanded, standing up. "The apartment," he said, his voice strange and hollow. "It's still in Mom's name." Maristella snatched the papers from him. I watched her read, watched her expression shift from confusion to understanding to something cold and hard. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken things. I turned back to my vegetables, my hands shaking slightly as I peeled the carrots. Behind me, I heard whispered, urgent conversation. I heard the rustle of papers being refolded. I heard disappointment and anger in tones too low for me to make out words. But I understood. Oh, I understood perfectly. They hadn't just been asking about my savings out of concern. They'd been taking inventory, planning, assuming that what was mine would eventually be theirs, and apparently they'd thought eventually had already arrived. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of my house, the refrigerator humming, the old heater clicking on, the creak of floorboards as someone moved around. And then, around 2:30 in the morning, I heard voices. I'd always been a light sleeper. Thomas used to joke that I could hear a mouse sneeze 3 rooms away. So when the whispered conversation started in the living room, I was awake instantly. At first I thought maybe I should make my presence known, walk out and ask if everything was okay. But something, that same instinct that had made me move my papers, kept me still and silent in my bed. "She has $280,000. Maristella's voice was low but clear in the quiet house. I saw her bank statement when I was looking through her desk last week. My heart clenched. She'd been through my desk, my private papers. "Mari, I don't know about this." Peregrine sounded uncertain, conflicted. For a moment, hope flickered in my chest. Maybe he would stop this. Maybe he would remember who he was, who I was, what we meant to each other. "What don't you know?" Maristella's voice had an edge now. "We're drowning in debt, Perry. $45,000 in credit cards. Your business failed. We lost our apartment. We're living in your mother's house like children." "I know, but what?" "She's 64 years old. She's retired. What does she need all that money for? She sits here sewing tablecloths and watching old movies. Meanwhile, we're young. We have our whole lives ahead of us. We have plans, dreams. It's her money, Mari. She earned it. And when she dies, it'll be yours anyway. So why not use it now, when it can actually help us build something?" The silence that followed seemed to last forever. I lay frozen in my bed, barely breathing, waiting for my son to defend me, to tell his wife that I was his mother, that I'd sacrificed everything for him, that my money was my security for old age. "How?" he finally asked, and that single word broke my heart more than anything Maristella had said. Because it wasn't no, it wasn't that's wrong, it was how. "We get her debit card, make withdrawals, not big ones, nothing that would alarm her. A few hundred here and there. She's old, she probably doesn't check her balance that carefully. And if she notices, we say she must have forgotten. We're already planting those seeds, asking if she forgets things, mentioning her age." "She'd notice," Peregrine said, but it wasn't a moral objection. It was a practical concern. "Then we try something else. Maybe we can get her to sign power of attorney. Say it's for her own good in case something happens to her. You're her only family. It makes sense. Then we'd have legal access to everything." I heard movement, maybe Peregrine standing up, pacing. "What if she won't sign?" "Then we find another way. We're not asking for charity here, Perry. That money will be yours eventually. We're just accelerating the timeline." "Let me think about it," he said finally. Don't think too long. We have bills due next week. I heard footsteps. They were going back to their room. The house fell silent again. I lay in the darkness, something cold and hard forming in my chest where my heart used to be. This was my son, the baby I'd nursed, the toddler I'd taught to tie his shoes, the teenager I'd stayed up late helping with homework, the young man I'd worked 3 jobs to put through college, and he was planning to steal from me. But here's what they didn't understand, what Maristella in her youth and arrogance couldn't possibly know. A 64-year-old woman who'd survived poverty, raised a child alone, worked until her hands ached and her feet swelled, and built a life from nothing. That woman was not weak. She was wise. And wisdom, I was about to teach them, could be more powerful than any scheme. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I didn't confront them. Instead, I smiled in the darkness. Because tomorrow, I would go to the bank. Tomorrow, I would start building my fortress. Tomorrow, I would show my son and his wife that they had made a fatal mistake. They thought I was a vulnerable old woman. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I woke at 6:30, earlier than usual. The house was still quiet. Peregrine and Maristella wouldn't surface for another 2 hours at least. I dressed carefully in my Sunday best. A navy blue dress, low heels, my pearl earrings, the ones Thomas had given me on our 20th anniversary. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back had gray hair, yes, and lines around her eyes. But those eyes were sharp, alert, angry, good. I made coffee, toasted a slice of bread, and ate standing by the kitchen window. At 7:45, I picked up my purse, double-checked that I had my ID and Social Security card, and walked out the door. I left no note. They didn't deserve an explanation. The morning air was crisp, promising rain later. I walked the 4 blocks to Central Bank, arriving 10 minutes before they opened. A young woman was already waiting by the doors, probably there to deposit her paycheck before work. We smiled at each other, 2 strangers sharing the small ritual of early morning banking. At 9 o'clock sharp, the doors unlocked. I went straight to the customer service desk. "I need to speak with an account manager," I told the receptionist. "It's urgent." She must have heard something in my voice because she didn't ask questions, just picked up the phone. 5 minutes later, a man in his early 50s approached, hand extended. "Mrs. Fairmont? I'm James Sullivan, Senior Account Manager. How can I help you today?" We sat in his small office. He offered me water, which I declined. He folded his hands on the desk and waited with the patience of someone who'd heard every kind of financial trouble. "My son and his wife are living with me," I began, and then, because there was no point in softening it, "they're planning to steal my money." To his credit, James Sullivan didn't look shocked. He didn't tell me I must be mistaken, didn't suggest I was being paranoid. He simply nodded and pulled out a notepad. "Tell me what's happened." So I did. I told him about the questions, the snooping, the conversation I'd overheard. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry you're going through this, Mrs. Fairmont," he said finally. "Unfortunately, we see this more often than you'd think. Family members, especially adult children, sometimes feel entitled to their parents' assets. But you've done the right thing by coming in." "What can I do?" "Several things. First, we'll change all your access credentials. Passwords, PIN numbers, security questions, everything. Second, we'll cancel your current debit card and issue a new one, which we'll hold here at the branch for you to pick up. That way, even if they find the card number written down somewhere, it won't work." He paused, typing something into his computer. "Third, I'm going to set up transaction alerts. Any purchase over $100, you'll get a text message immediately. Fourth, any withdrawal over $1,000 will require you to appear in person with photo ID. Can they call pretending to be me?" "We have voice recognition software now, and we always verify with multiple security questions. But to be extra safe..." He thought for a moment. "Let's create a verbal password, a phrase only you know. Anytime you call about your account, you'll need to provide it." The peregrine flies at dawn, I said. It came to me suddenly, a phrase from a spy novel I'd read years ago, and bitter now because of what it meant. My son, my wanderer, had come home only to prey on me. James typed it in. Perfect. Now there's one more thing I'd suggest. Let me create a secondary checking account with just $1,000 in it. Anyone who accesses your account information, through phishing, through guessing your passwords, whatever, they'll only see that account. Your main savings, the full amount, will move to what we call a secured account. It won't appear on standard inquiries. You'll need a special access code and biometric verification to even view the balance. A decoy account. Exactly. It took nearly 2 hours to set everything up. New passwords with random characters I wrote down on a card I'd keep in my bra. New security questions with answers that had nothing to do with my real life. My favorite color was listed as chartreuse, though I'd never worn chartreuse in my life. A new pin for my card that I practiced 3 times to memorize. When we finished, James walked me to the lobby. Your money is safe now, Mrs. Fairmont. Even if they get their hands on your debit card somehow, they can't use it. Even if they call the bank, they won't get past our security. And if they somehow manage to access your online account, which they won't because we've enabled 2-factor authentication on your cell phone, they'll only see $1,000. I shook his hand. Thank you. One more thing, he said quietly. If they do try something, call me immediately. We document everything. If this escalates, you might need evidence. The weight of that word, evidence, settled on my shoulders as I walked out into the morning sunshine. Evidence meant police, courts. It meant this wasn't just a family disagreement anymore. It meant war. But first, I had one more stop to make. Dorothy lived 6 blocks away in a small brick house she'd bought after her husband died. We'd been widows together, learned together how to live alone without becoming lonely. When she opened the door and saw my face, she pulled me inside without a word. Coffee or something stronger? She asked. Coffee. I need to think clearly. We sat at her kitchen table. I'd sat at this table 1,000 times over 35 years, and I told her everything. When I finished, I pulled the cloth bag from my purse. I need you to keep these for me, I said, handing it over. My important documents. The deed to my house, my will, copies of my bank statements, everything. I don't want them in my house anymore. Dorothy took the bag, her face grave. You really think Peregrine would? I heard him, Dorothy. He's considering it. Maybe he'll come to his senses. Maybe he won't. But I'm not taking chances. She stood and went to her bedroom, returning a moment later. I put them in my safe. No one knows the combination but me. She sat back down and took my hands. Phoenicia, I knew that boy since he was in diapers. What happened to him? Maristella happened, or maybe she just brought out what was already there. I sipped my coffee, which had gone lukewarm. Maybe I raised him to think he was entitled to things. Maybe I gave him too much, sacrificed too much, and he learned to see it as his due rather than my choice. Don't you dare blame yourself. I'm not. I'm just trying to understand. I stood. I should get back before they wonder where I went. At the door, Dorothy hugged me tight. You call me any time, day or night. You hear me? I hear you. I walked home slowly, stopping at the bakery for fresh rolls, my alibi for being out. The house smelled like expensive coffee when I walked in. They were awake. Where were you? Maristella asked the moment I entered. She was standing in the living room, arms crossed, as if she had a right to question my movements. The bakery, I said mildly, holding up the bag. I wanted fresh rolls for breakfast. She looked at the bag, then at me, suspicion clear in her eyes. But what could she say? That I wasn't allowed to leave my own house? Peregrine emerged from the bedroom, hair disheveled. Morning, Mom. Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well? Something flickered across his face, guilt maybe, or shame. But it was gone in an instant. Fine, thanks. The next few days were a strange dance. They watched me. I watched them watching me. The house felt like a stage where everyone was performing, but no one believed their own lines. Maristella kept bringing up the refrigerator. At breakfast, During dinner, while we watched the evening news, she showed me articles about energy efficiency, about smart home technology, about how modern appliances were actually investments. The one I showed you, she said on Thursday evening, it's on sale this week. 23,000 instead of 25. That's $2,000 in savings, Phoenicia. We should act fast. I don't need a new refrigerator, I said, keeping my voice calm. The one I have works perfectly well. But think of the electricity costs. Over 10 years, you'd save... Maristella. I set down my teacup and looked at her directly. I said no. Please stop asking. The room went cold. Peregrine shifted uncomfortably on the couch. I'm just trying to help, Maristella said, her voice tight. But if you want to be stubborn about it... She stood and went to their bedroom, closing the door just hard enough to make a point. Peregrine and I sat in silence. The TV played some commercial about car insurance. Finally he spoke. Mom, we really could use some help. Financially, I mean. I turned to look at my son. Really look at him. When had he become this person? When had he learned to see me as a resource instead of a mother? Are you asking me for a loan, Peregrine? Not a loan exactly. I mean, you have all that money saved, and you're not really using it. Mari and I, we're drowning in debt. Credit cards, mostly, from when I was trying to start the business. If we could just get out from under that, how much do you owe? $45,000. I felt the number like a physical blow. $45,000. I'd raised him, put him through college, helped him with his first car, his wedding. And he'd racked up $45,000 in debt and never said a word. I'm sorry you're in that situation, I said carefully, but that's not my responsibility. You're my mother, which is exactly why I spent the last 38 years taking care of you. I worked 3 jobs so you could have nice clothes and go on school trips. I sewed my own dresses so you could have a new backpack every year. I ate peanut butter sandwiches so you could have meat on your plate. My voice was still calm, but something hard had entered it. I've done my duty as a mother, Peregrine. What you do with your adult life is your responsibility. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. So you'll just let us suffer? I'll let you figure out your own problems, the way I had to figure out mine when your father died and left me with a mortgage and a child to raise, and no life insurance because we couldn't afford it. He stood up abruptly. This is pointless. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. He went to join his wife, and I was alone again in my living room, my heart pounding. I'd stood my ground. I'd said no. And it felt terrifying and powerful all at once. That night, around midnight, my cell phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer. Mrs. Fairmont? A woman's voice, professional, slightly concerned. This is Sandra calling from Central Bank Fraud Prevention. We've detected some unusual activity on your account and need to verify some transactions. I was wide awake instantly. What kind of activity? We're showing a charge of $500 at Dixon's Appliance Center. Did you authorize this purchase? Dixon's, where Maristella had gotten that refrigerator catalog. No, I said, I didn't make that purchase. I see. Well, we'll need to cancel your card immediately and issue a new one, but first, to verify your identity, I'll need your card number and the 3-digit security code on the back. And there it was, the trap. I'd been banking for 40 years. I'd sat through seminars at the senior center about phone scams. I knew that banks never ask for your full card number over the phone. What did you say your name was? I asked. Sandra Williams, Fraud Prevention Department. And you're calling from Central Bank? Yes, ma'am. At midnight? There was the slightest pause. Our fraud department operates 24 hours. Let me call you back, I said. What's your direct number? Ma'am, this is urgent. If we don't act now... I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. They'd tried to scam me, actually tried to trick me into giving them my card information. I got out of bed, threw on my robe, and marched to their bedroom door. I knocked hard. Rustling sounds. Then Maristella opened the door, wearing silk pajamas, her face carefully arranged in sleepy confusion. Phoenicia, what's wrong? It's the middle of the night. I just got a call, I said, from someone pretending to be the bank, asking for my card information. Oh my God, that's terrible. These scammers are everywhere. You didn't give them anything, did you? No, because I'm not as confused or forgetful as you seem to think I am. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. I don't know what you mean. Don't you? We stared at each other. Behind her, I could see Peregrine sitting up in bed watching us. I know what you're doing, I said quietly. Both of you. And it won't work. I turned and went back to my room, locking the door behind me. I sat on the edge of my bed, adrenaline coursing through me. They were escalating. First the gentle questions, then the planning. Now actual fraud. What would they try next? I didn't have to wait long to find out. 3 days later, I came home from the grocery store to find a strange car in my driveway. A silver BMW with tinted windows. Inside my house, sitting in my living room, was a woman I'd never seen before. She was about 45, wearing an expensive charcoal suit, her briefcase open on my coffee table. Peregrine sat across from her, looking uncomfortable. Maristella stood by the window, arms crossed. Phoenicia! Maristella's smile was bright, false, perfect timing. This is Victoria Grant. She's a lawyer. My stomach dropped, but I kept my face neutral. A lawyer, I see. And why is a lawyer in my living room? Victoria Grant stood, extending her hand. Her handshake was firm, professional. Mrs. Fairmont, it's nice to meet you. Your son has asked me to come discuss some options for protecting your assets. I don't recall asking for asset protection. No, ma'am, but Peregrine here is concerned about your welfare. As we age, we can become vulnerable to scams, financial exploitation. I'm 64, I interrupted, not 94. Of course, I didn't mean to imply you're not capable, but it's precisely because you're still mentally sharp that now is the ideal time to set up proper legal safeguards. Power of attorney, for instance. That way, if something were to happen, a medical emergency, for example, your son could manage your finances on your behalf. I looked at Peregrine. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Let me be very clear, I said, my voice like ice. I do not need anyone to manage my finances. I do not need safeguards. I am perfectly capable of handling my own affairs. Victoria's smile didn't waver. I understand your hesitation, but consider this. What if you had a stroke? What if you fell and hit your head? Without power of attorney, your money could be frozen while the courts sort things out. Your bills wouldn't get paid. You could lose your house. Or, I said, I could have a perfectly healthy old age and die peacefully in my sleep at 95, having managed my own money until the very end. That seems equally likely. Mom Peregrine finally spoke, his voice pleading. I'm just trying to protect you. From what? From whom? From people who might take advantage of you. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. Almost. Ms. Grant, I said, turning back to the lawyer, I appreciate you coming all this way, but your services aren't needed. I have a will. I have my affairs in order. I'm not signing anything today or any day. Mrs. Fairmont, I really think you should reconsider. I think you should leave my house now. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Victoria gathered her papers slowly, deliberately, probably hoping I'd change my mind. When I didn't, she snapped her briefcase shut. If you change your mind, here's my card. She set it on the coffee table. Sometimes people need time to think things through. I won't be needing it. I walked to the front door and opened it, standing there like a sentinel until she had no choice but to leave. As she passed me, she lowered her voice. You know, Mrs. Fairmont, if your family believes you're not competent to manage your affairs, they can petition the court for conservatorship. It's a lengthy process, but if they have evidence of declining mental capacity, get out of my house. She left. I closed the door and turned to face my son and his wife. They stood together, united against me, and something in my chest cracked. How dare you, I said, my voice shaking now. How dare you bring a lawyer into my home to try to take control of my money? We're trying to help you, Maristella shot back. You're being unreasonable, paranoid even. Maybe that lawyer was right. Maybe you aren't thinking clearly. Oh, I'm thinking very clearly, clearly enough to see exactly what you are, what I am. And what's that, Phoenicia? A gold digger, a manipulator, someone who married my son for what she thought he could provide and is now trying to strip mine his mother for her life savings. Maristella's face flushed red. You bitter old woman. You're just jealous that Perry has someone who actually loves him. If you loved him, you wouldn't be destroying his relationship with his mother. You wouldn't be turning him into a thief. A thief? Peregrine stepped forward. Mom, that's not fair. We haven't stolen anything. Not for lack of trying. I looked at him, this man who used to be my little boy. I heard you, Peregrine. That night, 3 weeks ago, I heard everything you and Maristella said about taking my debit card, about making me seem confused, about getting power of attorney. I heard it all. The blood drained from his face. And the phone call 3 nights ago, pretending to be the bank? Did you really think I was stupid enough to fall for that? I don't know what you're... Maristella started. Stop lying! The words erupted from me, loud and raw. I am done with the lies. I am done with you treating me like a fool, like an obstacle, like a bank account with a heartbeat. Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't care. I gave you everything, Peregrine, everything I had. I worked until my hands bled. I went without so you could have. And this is how you repay me? By trying to steal from me? By bringing lawyers to declare me incompetent? We need the money, Mom. His voice cracked. We're desperate. Then get jobs. Figure it out, like I did when your father died and left me with nothing. That's different. No, it's not. You just think it is because you've never had to struggle, because I made sure you never had to. Well, congratulations, son. You're about to learn what struggle feels like. The silence that followed was absolute. The next morning, they left early. Job interviews, Peregrine said, not quite meeting my eyes. But I knew where they were really going. I waited until their car disappeared around the corner. Then I called James Sullivan. They're coming, I said simply. I'll be ready. I sat by the window, waiting. 47 minutes later, my cell phone rang. Mrs. Fairmont, your son is here at the bank. James's voice was calm, professional. He's attempting to access your account. He says you sent him to withdraw money for medical expenses. He's claiming you're too ill to come yourself. My heart hammered. That's a lie. I know. He also had your old PIN, the one we changed. He must have found it written down somewhere. When the system rejected it, he became agitated. He's demanding to speak to a manager. Don't give him anything. I won't, but Mrs. Fairmont, I need to inform you. This is attempted fraud. You have grounds to file a police report. Police. The word hung in the air between us. Not yet, I said. Just document everything. But not yet. After I hung up, I sat very still. My son had just tried to steal from me, actually walked into a bank and attempted to withdraw my money using lies about my health. This was real. This was happening. And it was about to get worse. They came home 2 hours later, slamming the door. I was sitting in the living room, waiting. Peregrine's face was red, mottled with rage and humiliation. Maristella's expression was pure venom. What did you do? He demanded. I set down my teacup with deliberate calm. I protected my assets. What did you do? You changed everything. The PIN, the passwords, everything. You made me look like a fool at the bank. You made yourself look like a fool when you tried to steal from your mother. It's not stealing. That money's going to be mine anyway when you die. The words hung in the air like a curse. When you die. As if he were waiting for it, planning for it, maybe even hoping for it. Get out, I said quietly. What? I want you out of my house, both of you. Now, Maristella laughed, sharp and bitter. You can't kick us out. We live here. This house is in my name only. I decide who lives here, and I've decided that you don't, not anymore. Mom, wait, Peregrine started. No, I'm done waiting. Done hoping you'll remember who you are. Done letting you disrespect me in my own home. I stood, my whole body shaking. I heard you plan to steal from me. I watched you snoop through my things. I listened to your fake bank call. I tolerated a lawyer coming into my home to try to take my rights away. And today, you went to my bank and tried to withdraw my money by lying about my health. I don't care what you needed. My voice cracked. I needed a son who loved me. I needed a family. I needed to believe that all those years of sacrifice meant something. But clearly, they didn't. Peregrine's face crumpled. For just a moment, I saw something genuine there. Regret, shame, horror at what he'd become. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We were just desperate, and Mari said, "Don't you dare blame this on her." My voice was cold now, final. You're a grown man. You made choices. You chose to betray me. You chose money over your mother. So now I'm choosing myself over you. Phoenicia, Maristella's voice was steel. You're making a mistake. You throw us out now. Don't expect us to be here when you're old and sick and need someone to take care of you. I would rather die alone than live one more day with people who see me as a bank account. Something shifted in the room. The air changed. Even Maristella seemed to realize that she'd lost. Fine, she turned to Peregrine. Pack your things. We're leaving. Mari, wait. He reached for her arm, then looked at me. Mom, please. Can't we talk about this? And here it was. The moment. The choice. I could soften. I could give him another chance. I could be the understanding mother, the forgiving soul, the woman who puts family above all else. But I thought about that midnight conversation, about the lawyer, about the bank, about all the ways they tried to manipulate, steal, and control. No, I said, we can't. They packed in bitter silence. I heard drawers opening and closing, zippers being pulled, Maristella's sharp voice issuing orders. 38 minutes later, they emerged with 3 suitcases and 2 boxes. At the door, Peregrine stopped. He turned to me, his eyes red. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. I know you don't believe me, but I am. I wanted to hug him. God help me. I wanted to forgive him right there, to tell him it was okay, to let him stay. But I knew that if I did, nothing would change. He'd apologize, promise to do better, and 6 months from now we'd be right back here. Goodbye, Peregrine. He flinched like I'd hit him. Then he nodded and walked out. Maristella followed without a word. I watched from the window as they loaded their car. Watched as Peregrine looked back at the house one last time. Watched as they drove away, taillights disappearing into the evening. Then I closed the curtains, walked to my bedroom, and lay down on my bed. And finally, I let myself cry. Not just for Peregrine, for the son I thought I'd raised, for the family I thought I had, for the dream of being taken care of in my old age by the child I devoted my life to. I cried until my throat was raw, and my eyes were swollen, and there were no tears left. Then I got up, washed my face, and looked at myself in the mirror. You did the right thing, I told my reflection. And somewhere, deep inside, beneath the pain and the grief and the loneliness, I knew it was true. The first week was the hardest. I moved through my house like a ghost, touching things that reminded me of Peregrine. The chip in the kitchen doorframe from when he'd tried to carry his bicycle inside during a rainstorm. The faded spot on the living room wall where his high school graduation photo had hung for 20 years. The second bedroom, his room, now empty except for the furniture and the ghost of his childhood. I didn't sleep well. Every night I lay awake, replaying conversations, wondering if I'd been too harsh, too quick to judge, too unwilling to forgive. The mother guilt was relentless. Had I failed him somehow? Had I taught him to be entitled by giving too much? Or had I taught him nothing at all? On the 5th night, I cried again. Not the raw, anguished sobs of that first night, but quieter tears. I looked at a photo from his 7th birthday, Peregrine grinning with chocolate cake smeared across his face, me beside him, younger, happier, still married, still believing the world was fundamentally good. I miss you, I whispered to that little boy, but I don't know the man you became. The next morning, Dorothy arrived with a container of her famous chicken soup. "You look terrible," she said, which was Dorothy's way of saying she loved me. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Maristella had asked those first probing questions about my savings, though that felt like years ago now, instead of weeks. "I keep wondering if I should have given them another chance," I admitted, staring into my soup bowl. "How many chances did they have?" Dorothy asked. "They had the chance not to snoop. They had the chance not to plan stealing from you. They had the chance not to call pretending to be the bank. They had the chance not to bring a lawyer. They had the chance not to go to your bank with lies." "How many chances is enough, Phoenicia?" "But he's my son." "Yes, and you're a person who deserves respect and dignity. Love isn't supposed to hurt like this, honey. Real love doesn't plot and scheme and manipulate." I sipped the soup. It was good. It was always good. Dorothy had been making this soup for 35 years, and it always tasted like comfort, like home, like someone giving a damn. "The house is so quiet," I said. "Quiet isn't always bad. Sometimes quiet is peaceful." She was right. As the days passed, I began to notice the difference. I wasn't on edge anymore, waiting for the next question about my bank account, the next invasion of my privacy, the next attempt to manipulate me. I could leave my purse on the kitchen counter without worrying someone would go through it. I could check my bank balance without fear of finding unauthorized withdrawals. The quiet wasn't empty. It was clean. By the end of the second week, something shifted. I woke up one morning and realized I hadn't thought about Peregrine in the first 5 minutes of consciousness. I'd thought about the sunshine coming through my window, about the Cardinal building, a nest in the oak tree outside, about what I might make for breakfast. It was a small thing, but it felt like the first green shoot pushing through frozen ground. Spring was coming. Maybe not outside, it was only October, but inside me, something was beginning to thaw. 3 weeks after I asked them to leave, I went to Sunday Mass. Father William Hayes gave a sermon about forgiveness, and I sat in the pew wondering if God was being ironic. Afterward, as people filed out, Father William caught my eye. "Phoenicia, I haven't seen Peregrine lately. Is everything all right?" For a moment, I considered lying, making excuses, protecting my son's reputation the way mothers do. But I was tired of protecting people who wouldn't protect me. "We've had a falling out," I said simply. "He's not living with me anymore." Father William's kind face creased with concern. "I'm sorry to hear that. If you need someone to talk to..." "Thank you, Father, but I think I need to figure this out on my own." Walking home, I noticed things I hadn't paid attention to in months. The flowers in Mrs. Henderson's garden, the new coffee shop on Main Street, the bulletin board outside the community center advertising classes, pottery, watercolor painting, line dancing, quilting. Watercolor painting caught my eye. I stopped reading the details. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, 2 to 4. Beginner's welcome. $45 a month. I hadn't painted since high school, back when I dreamed of being an artist, but then I'd met Thomas, gotten married, had Peregrine, and those dreams had gotten packed away like old clothes you mean to wear again someday, but never do. I was 64 years old. How much someday did I have left? I pulled out my phone and called the number on the flyer. "Hello, this is Evelyn." "Hi, I'm calling about the painting class." "Wonderful. Have you painted before?" "Not in about 45 years. Evelyn laughed, warm and welcoming. "Then you're exactly who this class is for. Can you start this Tuesday?" I thought about my calendar. Empty. No one to cook for, no one to accommodate, nowhere I needed to be except where I wanted to be. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I can." That Tuesday, I walked into the community center's art room feeling nervous as a teenager. There were 8 other people, all around my age, all looking equally uncertain. Evelyn was a woman in her 70s with paint-stained fingers and a smile that crinkled her whole face. "Art isn't about being perfect," she told us. "It's about seeing the world and showing us what you saw." So let's stop worrying about being good and start having fun. She taught us about mixing colors, about how blue and yellow make green, but the proportions matter, about how water dilutes pigment and creates transparency. I painted a simple landscape, a tree, a sky, a suggestion of grass. It was clumsy and amateurish, but it was mine. When I got home, I hung it on my refrigerator with a magnet, right where a child's artwork would go. Because in a way, I was a child again, learning something new, trying something just because it made me happy. The next week, I joined Dorothy's quilting circle. Then I started volunteering at the church food pantry on Wednesdays. I discovered the library had a book club for seniors. I went to a concert at the community college, some jazz ensemble, and I didn't know any of the songs, but the music filled something hollow inside me. I met Grace Thompson at the quilting circle. She was 70, sharp as a tack, with silver hair she wore in a braid down her back. "You're Phoenicia, right? Dorothy's mentioned you." "Hopefully not too much," Grace laughed. "She said you're going through a hard time with family." I tensed, but Grace's eyes were kind, knowing. "My daughter tried to get me declared incompetent 5 years ago," she said matter-of-factly. "Wanted to get conservatorship of my assets. Said I was showing signs of dementia." "Were you?" "Hell no. I was showing signs of not giving her money whenever she asked for it." Grace's hands kept moving, stitching a precise seam. "I fought her in court. Took a year and cost me $15,000 in lawyer fees, but I won. We haven't spoken since." "Do you regret it?" Grace looked up, her needle pausing. "I regret that she's the kind of person who would do that. But I don't regret standing up for myself. Some people will take and take until there's nothing left of you, even if those people are family, especially if they're family, because they know exactly which buttons to push." I nodded, understanding perfectly. "The hardest part," Grace continued, "was accepting that the daughter I thought I had never really existed. I'd built this image of her in my head, the loving child, the grateful daughter. But that was my fantasy, not reality. Once I let go of the fantasy, I could grieve it and move on." That night, I thought about Grace's words, about fantasies and reality, about the Peregrine I'd imagined, the son who loved me unconditionally, who would take care of me in my old age, who saw me as a person rather than a resource, and the Peregrine who actually existed. Grieving a living person is strange, but it's necessary. So I grieved. And slowly, in the spaces where that grief had been, something else grew. Freedom. On a gray afternoon in late November, 3 months after Peregrine left, I found a letter in my mailbox. My name and address were handwritten in familiar script. My hands shook as I opened it. "Dear Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know what Marie and I tried to do was unforgivable. We separated 2 weeks ago. She left when she realized you weren't going to give us money. She's already with someone else, some guy who works in finance, has a trust fund. I don't think she ever loved me. I think she loved what she thought I could provide. I'm living in a studio apartment in the bad part of town, working 2 jobs, morning shift at a warehouse, nights driving for a rideshare service. I'm paying off the debt, slowly. It'll take me 2 years, but I'll do it. I started seeing a therapist. She asked me how I became the kind of person who could betray his own mother. I didn't have a good answer. I still don't. Somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as, I don't even know, a safety net, a backup plan, an ATM. I'm not asking to come back. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, truly, deeply sorry, and that I'm trying to become someone better, someone you could maybe be proud of again. If you never want to see me again, I understand, but I needed you to know that you were right about everything, about Mari, about me, about all of it. Your son, who failed you, Peregrine." I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my dresser drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't call him. I didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone, not even your child. Forgiveness is something you give when you're ready, if you're ready, and only if the other person has truly changed. Words are easy, actions are truth. So I waited to see what his actions would be. 4 months after he left, I saw him. I was at the farmer's market filling my canvas bag with fresh vegetables when I glanced up and there he was, 2 stalls down, counting out exact change for a bunch of carrots. He'd lost weight. His clothes were worn, but clean. There was a tiredness around his eyes that hadn't been there before, but also something else. Something quieter, humbler. Our eyes met. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then he walked over slowly, like approaching a wild animal that might bolt. "Mom?" "Peregrine." Silence. Around us, the market bustled, people laughing, vendors calling out prices, children begging for fresh baked cookies. "How are you?" he asked. "I'm well. You?" "I'm managing." He shifted his weight. "Got the second debt payment in last week. 43,000 to go." I nodded, said nothing. "I got your letter," I finally said. His face brightened with hope, then dimmed when I didn't continue. "I meant every word." "Words are easy, Peregrine." "I know." He looked down at his scuffed shoes. "That's why I'm not asking for anything. Not forgiveness, not a relationship, not—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better." An elderly woman jostled past us, apologizing. The moment hung between us, fragile as spun glass. "Have you eaten today?" I heard myself ask. He looked up, surprised. Not since breakfast." "There's a Vietnamese place around the corner. They have good pho." "Mom, you don't have to—" "I'm asking if you're hungry, Peregrine. It's a simple question." His eyes welled up. "Yes, ma'am, I'm hungry." We walked to the restaurant in silence, ordered, sat across from each other in a corner booth. When the food came, I watched him eat. Not frantically, but steadily, like someone who'd learned what real hunger felt like. "The therapy helping?" I asked. "Yeah, she doesn't let me make excuses. Calls me on my bullshit." He glanced up. "Sorry, on my nonsense." "I've heard worse." A small smile. Then it faded. "I'm not asking to come back, Mom. I know I burned that bridge. I miss you. I miss talking to you. Even if it's just this. Once. Even if I never see you again after today." I sipped my tea, studying him, looking for signs of manipulation, of angles, of the old Peregrine who wanted something. But all I saw was a tired man who'd learned some hard lessons. "I'm taking painting classes," I said. He blinked at the non sequitur. "Yeah?" "And I joined a quilting circle. And a book club. I'm volunteering at the food pantry." That's good, Mom. I'm glad. I'm rebuilding my life. A life that's mine, no one else's." He nodded, understanding. "You deserve that." "Yes, I do." We finished eating. When the check came, I paid. He tried to protest, but I gave him a look and he backed down. Outside the restaurant, we stood awkwardly. Can I call you sometime?" he asked. "Just to talk?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "Once a month," I said finally. "You can call once a month. We'll see how it goes." "Okay, thank you." He moved like he might hug me, then stopped himself. "Thank you, Mom." I watched him walk away, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the November wind. I felt something. Not quite forgiveness, not quite trust, but maybe the faint possibility of both, someday, if he kept walking the path he was on. Maybe. Thanksgiving. I stood in my kitchen, basting the turkey, a modest 10-pounder, not the 20-pound monster I used to make when I was trying to have leftovers for weeks. Dorothy was bringing sweet potato casserole. Grace was bringing her famous pecan pie. Father William was coming too. We'd been having coffee together after Wednesday services, and somewhere along the way it had become something that made me smile. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 o'clock. Peregrine stood on my porch holding a bakery box. He was wearing slacks and a button-down shirt, his hair neatly combed. He'd gained back some weight, the healthy kind. "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom." "Happy Thanksgiving, come in." He'd been calling once a month, like clockwork. The first call had been stilted, awkward. By the sixth call, we'd found our rhythm, small talk about weather and work, carefully avoiding the minefield of the past. In October, he'd told me he'd paid off half the debt. In November, he'd asked if he could come to Thanksgiving. I'd said yes. But I'd also invited Dorothy, Grace, and Father William. Safety in numbers. And if I was honest, I wanted him to see my new life, the life I'd built without him. He set the bakery box on the counter. "Pumpkin cheesecake, from that place on 5th Street you used to love." You remembered. "I remember a lot of things." His eyes met mine. "I remember a lot of things I took for granted." The doorbell rang again. Dorothy, right on time, carrying her casserole and her no-nonsense attitude. Then Grace, then Father William. We gathered around my table, the same table where this had all started, where Maristella had asked those first invasive questions. But now it was covered with a tablecloth I'd sewn myself, set with mismatched plates from the thrift store, surrounded by people who saw me as Phoenicia, not as someone's mother or someone's bank account, just Phoenicia, which was enough. During dinner, Peregrine was quiet, polite, helping clear plates and refill water glasses. Grace told a story about her granddaughter. Father William shared a terrible joke. Dorothy complained about the new highway construction. Normal. Easy. No undercurrents. Later, after everyone had left and Peregrine was putting on his coat to go, he paused. "You're painting," he said, gesturing to the watercolor hanging by the window, a landscape I'd done last month, much better than that first clumsy attempt. "It's really good, Mom." "Thank you. You seem happy. Happier than I've seen you in years." "I am happy." He nodded, processing this. "I'm glad. You deserve to be happy." At the door, he hesitated. "Would it be okay if I came for Christmas? Not to stay, just for dinner." I thought about it, about the year that had passed, about the monthly phone calls where he'd never once asked for money, never made excuses, just slowly, painfully rebuilt himself into someone I could maybe someday trust again. "We'll see how December goes," I said. "Call me like usual. We'll talk about it." "Okay," a small smile. "I'll call." After he left, I cleaned the kitchen, put away leftovers, washed the dishes by hand, even though I had a perfectly good dishwasher. I liked the ritual of it, the warm water, the simple task. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, frightened, betrayed, heartbroken. I thought about the woman I was now, stronger, clearer, more myself than I'd been in decades. Had I forgiven Peregrine? Not entirely. Maybe never entirely. Some wounds scar, and the scars don't disappear just because the wound has healed. But had I made space for the possibility of a relationship? A different relationship, one built on respect rather than obligation, on honesty rather than manipulation? Yes, I had. Because forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's not about going back to how things were. It's about choosing to move forward without the weight of bitterness, about protecting yourself while leaving the door open a crack, about loving someone from a safe distance until, if they prove they deserve to come closer. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window watching the sunset over my quiet street. My bank account held $287,000 now. I'd been good about not touching it, plus interest. My house was mine, my name alone on the deed. My calendar was full of art classes and book clubs and volunteer shifts and coffee dates with a kind man who made me laugh. I had friends. I had purpose. I had peace. And I had learned the most important lesson of all, that loving yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. That setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's necessary. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for others, is to say no. I raised my glass to my reflection in the darkening window. "Here's to you, Phoenicia Fairmont," I said softly. "You survived. and you're going to be just fine. Outside, the first stars appeared in the November sky. Inside, I was warm and safe and free. And that, I had learned, was worth more than all the money in the world.